After my mother's funeral, I thought the hardest part was over. But grief has a cruel sense of humor. It doesn't just take people, it reveals who they really were. 3 days after we buried Mom, my sister Lydia showed up at the cabin, Mom's cabin, with her husband, Jason, and a U-Haul full of boxes. She didn't knock. She didn't even ask. She just smiled and said, "Mom wouldn't want the house to sit empty, right?" I stood there on the porch, the will still folded in my pocket, with my name printed clearly as the only heir. The house Mom built with her hands, now overrun by greed wrapped in family ties. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just watched them carry in their things and quietly started planning the surprise that would make them wish they'd never crossed my doorstep. Mom always said the woods could tell when you were lying. Maybe that's why she loved this place so much, because here, nothing fake ever lasted. The cabin sat on 3 acres of sloping pine forest, not far from the lake where she used to take us fishing. It wasn't grand, but it was honest. Cedar walls, a porch that groaned like an old friend, and the smell of sap that clung to everything. She built most of it with Dad before he passed. Every beam, every nail had a memory. When the lawyer read her will, my hands shook as he said my name. To my youngest daughter, Harper Hayes, I leave the Willow Creek cabin and its surrounding land. Lydia's eyes flicked toward me, wide and sharp. She didn't smile. Jason muttered something under his breath, something about fairness, but I didn't respond. Mom had made her choice, and it wasn't up for debate. That night, I drove up to the cabin alone. The road curved like a question through the trees. When I parked, the silence greeted me first, heavy but comforting. Inside, the air still smelled like her, lavender and wood smoke. Her knitting basket sat beside the chair, half a scarf still hanging from the needles. I sank into that chair and closed my eyes. It wasn't peace yet, but it was close. The next morning, I made coffee the way Mom did, strong, no sugar, and walked outside barefoot. The dew wet my toes. The world was quiet except for the creek gurgling nearby. I thought maybe, finally, I could start to heal. Then my phone buzzed. Lydia. "Hey, Harp. Jason and I have been thinking we should take care of the cabin for a while. You're still grieving. It'll help you to have family around." I stared at the screen. My pulse thudded in my throat. Take care of it? As if it were some stray dog, not my inheritance. "That's not necessary," I typed back. "I'm already here." Her reply came fast. "Perfect! We'll be there Saturday then. Can't wait." No question mark. No hesitation. Just "we'll be there." The coffee went cold in my hand. I set the mug down on the porch rail, staring out at the forest that had been my mother's pride and joy. She'd trusted me to protect it, and I would. But for now, I said nothing. Let them come. The woods remember what belongs to them, and what doesn't. Saturday came wrapped in gray clouds and the smell of rain. I'd hoped maybe the weather would keep them away. Maybe Lydia would decide that a long drive into the forest wasn't worth the trouble. But around noon, the crunch of tires on gravel shattered the quiet. Their SUV rolled up the driveway like it owned the place. Jason honked twice before cutting the engine. The door slammed, and Lydia stepped out wearing Mom's scarf, the faded blue one she used to wear on cold mornings. "Can you believe it's been so long?" Lydia said brightly, her voice slicing through the still air. "The cabin looks smaller than I remember." Jason stretched, glanced around, and gave a low whistle. "Could use some updates. Maybe a new deck, fresh paint. You'd be surprised what this property could sell for." Sell. The word twisted something in my gut. "I'm not planning to sell it," I said flatly. He grinned. "Not yet." They brushed past me, dragging boxes across the porch. Lydia waved a hand dismissively. "Don't be so tense, Harper. We'll just stay for a little while, keep the place warm. You can't be up here all alone." Mom wouldn't like that. She also wouldn't like people moving into her home without asking. Lydia stopped mid-step, looked over her shoulder, and smiled, that tight, condescending smile she'd perfected since childhood. "You always were territorial. It's just a house." No, it wasn't. It was the last piece of Mom I had left. By sunset, my living room was a war zone of luggage, blankets, and half-unpacked boxes. Jason had already claimed Dad's recliner, his boots propped on the coffee table. Lydia rearranged furniture for better energy flow, shoving aside Mom's handmade rug. "Where do you want us to sleep?" she asked sweetly. "The guest room? Or maybe the master bedroom, since it's bigger?" I didn't answer. I just walked to the kitchen, poured myself another coffee, and stared out the window as rain began to fall. Behind me, their laughter filled the room. The sound felt wrong, like noise in a church. Later that night, when they finally went to bed, I crept outside onto the porch. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest dripping and silver. The air was cold, sharp, alive. Mom's wind chime jingled faintly under the eaves, the same melody she'd loved. It reminded me of her voice, gentle but warning. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of my sister snoring inside my mother's bedroom, and I made a promise to myself. They wanted to take over what wasn't theirs. Fine. Let them. Because by the time I was done, they'd never want to come back here again. The next morning, Lydia woke me up by banging pots in the kitchen like it was her own home. "Harper, where's the cinnamon? Jason likes French toast." Jason likes a lot of things. Mostly things that belong to other people. I pulled on a sweater and walked in. She'd already raided Mom's spice cabinet, her jewelry box sitting open on the counter like decoration. "You shouldn't touch that," I said quietly. Lydia waved her hand. "Relax. It's just stuff. Mom wouldn't care, but she would." Mom cared about everything in this cabin. Every spoon, every chipped mug told a story. Lydia didn't see history, she saw possessions. I smiled tightly. "You're right. Mom wouldn't want us to fight." Jason looked up from his plate, a smear of syrup on his chin. "Now that's the spirit. We're family. Let's make this work." His phone buzzed. I caught a glimpse of a text before he flipped it over. "Any updates on listing?" My stomach dropped. Listing? As in, real estate? They weren't just squatting. They were planning to sell it. That afternoon, when they drove into town for groceries, I opened Lydia's laptop. The screen blinked awake to a draft property ad. 2-bedroom lakeside cabin. Potential family getaway or Airbnb opportunity. She'd even uploaded photos once she'd taken that morning without me noticing. My hands clenched. Then, slowly, I exhaled. Mom used to say, "You can't reason with greed. You outsmart it." I knew exactly what to do. First, I called the ranger station. A calm, friendly voice answered Officer Keller. "Hi, I'm Harper Hayes. I'm living near Willow Creek, and I've noticed some bear activity. I want to make sure the property's secure." He told me about motion sensors, trail cameras, and noise deterrents. "Don't worry," he said. "The bears won't bother you if you keep things sealed up." "Oh, I plan to," I said. In town, I bought everything I needed: 2 motion-activated cameras, wind chimes made of old tin, a can of industrial bear spray, and a few packs of powdered meat scent used for wildlife photography. When I returned, Lydia and Jason were gone again, maybe out scouting buyers. Perfect. I spent the next 2 hours setting up. Cameras angled toward the driveway and porch. Metal cans strung in the trees that would rattle with the slightest breeze. Scent pouches hung far from the house, just enough to draw curious wildlife near the edge of the woods, not toward the cabin. By sunset, the air smelled faintly of pine and something wild beneath it. Inside, I washed my hands, humming the same lullaby Mom used to sing when she worked late. Let Lydia think I was quiet. Let Jason think I was weak. They'd find out soon enough I was my mother's daughter, and Mom always protected what was hers. The first night after I set the traps, the woods changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. It started around midnight. A metallic clink echoed outside, followed by the low groan of wind sliding through the pines. Jason muttered something, rolled over, and went back to sleep. But Lydia heard it too. "Harper?" she called from the hallway. "Did you hear that?" I pretended to wake up. "Probably the wind. Go back to bed." Another rattle. Then a scraping sound near the shed. I smiled into the dark. The first camera had just gone live. Lydia's footsteps creaked down the hallway. "Jason, get up. There's something out there," he groaned. "For God's sake, Lyd, it's a raccoon." "Then go check." Their voices tangled with panic. Jason finally stomped out, grabbing a flashlight. I stood at the window, pretending to look concerned. The beam cut through the fog and landed on a pair of glowing eyes. Jason froze. "Holy..." The flashlight dropped, A deep grunt rumbled from the woods. The sound of an animal, close but unseen. Jason bolted back to the door. "There's something out there!" I raised an eyebrow. "Told you we should have kept the trash sealed." Lydia clutched her robe. "We're calling animal control." "Sure," I said, sipping tea. "Just tell them you've moved into bear country without permission." Her mouth fell open, but no sound came. The next morning, the forest was calm again, as if nothing had happened. But Jason refused to leave the cabin. He double-locked the doors and paced like a caged animal. By noon, I got an alert on my phone. Motion detected, shed camera 2. I opened the feed. Jason was outside, shovel in hand, muttering. He was checking the ground, looking for tracks. When he passed near the sensor by the fence, a pre-recorded growl roared from the small speaker I'd hidden beneath the brush. Jason screamed so loud a flock of crows burst from the trees. He sprinted back inside, slamming the door behind him. "Harper, there's something in the woods. I swear it's following me." Lydia paled. "We should leave." "No," he snapped. "I'm not letting her scare us off." Her eyes darted toward me. "You are doing this, aren't you?" I tilted my head. "Doing what?" "Setting up motion lights and security cameras? It's called being responsible. You should try it." That night, they didn't laugh. They didn't rearrange furniture or play music. They just sat in silence, every thump outside making them flinch. From my room, I watched them through the hallway's reflection, clutching each other, whispering in the dark. For the first time since Mom's funeral, I slept soundly. By the 4th day, the tension in the cabin felt like static before a storm. Jason hadn't stepped outside since the growl incident, and Lydia had started jumping at her own reflection in the window. Every time the metal cans clinked in the wind, she flinched. I pretended to be calm, reading, cleaning, humming softly, but inside, I could feel something shifting. The fear I'd carried since the funeral was fading, replaced by quiet, deliberate anger. That afternoon, Lydia cornered me in the kitchen. "This has gone far enough," she hissed. "Whatever's happening here, the noises, the lights, stop it." "I'm not doing anything," I said, stirring my tea. "Nature just has a way of dealing with intruders." She blinked, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, Jason burst in, waving my tablet. "You think we're stupid? I found your camera feeds." I froze. He'd gone through my things. "You've been filming us?" Lydia demanded, her voice trembling. "I've been securing my property," I corrected. "Mom left this house to me. Your guests, uninvited ones." Jason scoffed. "Guests? We're family. You can't record us without permission." "I don't need your permission," I said evenly. "Legally, I own every wall and every inch of land around it." He laughed bitterly. "Yeah? Let's see how much that's worth when we sell it." The word "sell" made my jaw tighten. "You mean the listing Lydia's been working on?" Their faces went white. "I saw the draft," I continued. "Nice pictures. Great marketing copy. Too bad it's for a property that's not yours to sell." Lydia's lip quivered. "You went through my laptop?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I said sweetly. "Was I invading your privacy?" For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of Mom's old wall clock. Then Jason slammed the tablet onto the counter. "You're insane. You've always been jealous of Lydia, her marriage, her success, everything." I stepped closer. "Jealous? Of someone who can't survive without stealing from the dead?" "Mom wouldn't have wanted this," Lydia snapped. "She'd hate seeing us fight. Mom would hate seeing you live in her bed while plotting to sell her house." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "We just needed money. Then you should have asked, not taken." Jason grabbed his jacket, his voice rising. "You'll regret this, Harper. You're not as smart as you think." I looked him straight in the eye. "Maybe not, but I am patient, and this house doesn't like liars." He froze, uncertain whether I was joking. I wasn't. That night, the storm finally broke, wind howling, branches scraping the roof, the cans outside clanging like a warning bell. Through the thunder, I heard Lydia crying softly in Mom's old room. I didn't go to comfort her. Some lessons are meant to be learned in the dark. By morning, the storm had passed, but the air inside the cabin was heavier than the rain-soaked ground outside. I could feel it, the shift from fear to fury. Lydia's eyes were red and puffy when she walked into the kitchen. Jason followed close behind, his jaw tight, his voice already raised. "This ends today," he said, slapping a stack of papers onto the table. "We talked to a lawyer. Since Mom didn't leave a formal property survey, there's legal ambiguity. We could contest the will." I stared at him, almost laughing. "You'd challenge your dead mother-in-law's signature because you got bored of stealing silverware?" Lydia flinched. "Harper, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. We can share the house. Split it 50-50. Share?" I repeated. "You mean I let you sell it and take half the profit while you pretend you ever lifted a finger for Mom?" Jason's nostrils flared. "You're impossible." We tried to be civil. I stood up slowly, steadying my voice. "No, Jason. You tried to be clever. You thought you could gaslight me in my own home. But you forgot something." I reached for my tablet, tapped the screen, and turned it toward them. Video thumbnails filled the display, timestamps, faces, voices. I pressed play. The first clip showed Lydia opening Mom's jewelry box. The second showed Jason in the shed, snapping photos of tools. The third, Lydia, whispering on the phone. "Once the listing goes live, she won't even know until it's sold." Lydia gasped, color draining from her face. You set us up." "No," I said. "You set yourselves up. I just pressed record." Jason slammed his palm on the table. "You think you can blackmail us?" I met his glare, calm as ice. "No, Jason, I think I can stop you." I opened the folder beside me, printed copies of Mom's will, the property deed, and an email from the attorney confirming the title transfer to my name. Then I slid across a flash drive. Inside is a copy of every video. The originals are in cloud storage, and my lawyer already has access. So if anything happens to me or this cabin, these go straight to the sheriff's department. Jason's bravado faltered. He looked at Lydia, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. "Harper," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, don't ruin us. We were desperate." I took a breath. "Mom left this house to me for a reason. She knew you'd try to take it like you've taken everything else. I'm not her. I don't forgive that easily." Lydia's tears spilled over. We just wanted a fresh start. Entry. Then start somewhere else." Silence swallowed the room. Even the forest outside seemed to hold still. Jason grabbed his keys and muttered, "We're leaving. You can rot in this cabin alone." "Good," I said softly. "At least I'll be surrounded by things that belong here." They stormed out. Through the window, I watched their SUV fishtail down the muddy road, taillights blinking like retreating embers. For a long while, I stood there, waiting for the adrenaline to settle. The cabin creaked as if exhaling. I walked through each room, Mom's photos, her worn books, her knitting still on the chair, and whispered, "It's over, Mom. I did it." But as I stepped onto the porch, something unexpected flickered in my chest, not triumph, but sorrow. Lydia's tears, Jason's anger, the broken threads of a family unraveling for good. The forest was silent again, but I could almost hear Mom's voice in the wind. "You did what you had to do, Harper. But peace always costs something." I looked out into the dark pines, the world finally still, and whispered back, "I know, Mom, I know." Then I closed the door and locked it for the last time. Days passed, and the silence in the cabin shifted from eerie to sacred. The woods had gone quiet again. The metal cans outside barely moved in the wind. For the first time in weeks, I could hear myself think. 3 days after Lydia and Jason left, I got a call from the local sheriff. His voice was calm but firm. "Miss Hayes, we received a tip about possible property fraud involving your sister. Seems someone tried to list your cabin for sale under her name." I smiled faintly. I was wondering when that would catch up to them. He paused. "You've already got documentation?" "I do. Video, dates, and a lawyer who's been waiting for your call." He chuckled softly. "You sound prepared." "I learned from my mother," I said, and hung up. That afternoon, I received an email from my attorney confirming that the case was closed. Lydia and Jason had been warned formally by the county. Any further interference would result in criminal charges. No jail time, no courtroom drama, just a clean legal line drawn between us. But closure doesn't always feel good. That night, I found a folded piece of paper under the door. My name scrawled across it in Lydia's handwriting. "You win, Harper." I hope you enjoy your precious cabin. You've turned into someone I don't even recognize. Maybe that's what happens when you're alone too long. For a moment, I almost crumpled it in anger. But then I saw the smear of raindrops on the ink, or maybe tears. I placed the letter on the mantel beside Mom's photograph. In the firelight, Mom's smile looked different. Proud, maybe, or relieved. The next morning, I walked down to the lake. Mist hovered over the water, pale and weightless. I sat on the dock with my coffee, feeling the chill seep through my sweater. This was what Mom loved most about this place. How it forgave everything. How the sun always returned after the storm. For the first time, I understood her. She didn't build this cabin just for peace. She built it to endure storms, seasons, even betrayal. As I walked back to the porch, a soft rattle came from the tin cans strung along the tree line. I smiled. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was Mom. Either way, the sound wasn't a warning anymore. It was a reminder. Peace doesn't come from avoiding the fight. It comes from winning it on your own terms. I sat in Mom's old chair, pulled her blanket over my knees, and watched the trees sway gently in the morning light. The war was over, and for the first time since the funeral, the house felt like home again. Spring arrived quietly that year, almost as if the woods were testing whether it was safe to bloom again. The snow melted off the roof, the creek began to hum softly, and patches of wildflowers started appearing where the frost had been. I took it as a sign the forest was healing. So was I. I spent my mornings on the porch with a cup of coffee, writing in the journal Mom had given me years ago. Every page started with her favorite phrase, "Begin again." And that's what I did. I fixed the loose porch step, rehung the wind chime she'd made out of seashells, and restored her small garden patch. Each act felt like a conversation with her, one word at a time, one nail, one seed. Sometimes, I'd still hear the echo of Lydia's voice in my head, the laughter, the anger, the plea to just share. But the house no longer carried that heaviness. It had returned to what it was meant to be, a space for quiet, for truth, for remembering. Then one afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the pines, the mail carrier left a small envelope. The handwriting was familiar. Lydia. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Harper, I don't expect forgiveness. I only want to say I'm sorry to you, to Mom, to myself. I was angry, and I let Jason's desperation turn into mine. He's gone now. We separated. I know you'll probably never want to see me again, but if you ever decide to, I'd love to visit Mom's garden just once. L. For a long moment, I didn't move. The air felt still, like the woods were listening. Then I folded the letter neatly and placed it under the photograph of Mom that hung above the fireplace. Maybe one day, I whispered. But not yet. Outside, the forest glowed gold with the last light of day. The breeze carried the sound of the tin cans rattling softly, not sharp like before, but gentle, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. I stepped onto the porch, wrapped in Mom's cardigan, and watched the trees sway against the fading sky. The cabin looked different now, not just as a house I inherited, but as something I'd finally earned. The woods had tested me, just as they'd tested Mom. And like her, I'd survived bruised, wiser, but still standing. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of pine and damp earth. For the first time since she was gone, I felt her peace settle around me like a blanket. The cabin creaked softly, the fire crackled inside, and somewhere beyond the trees, the wind carried a whisper that almost sounded like her voice. You did well, Harper. You finally came home.